A very good greetings, everyone. Welcome to the lecture series of symbolic expression. I warmly welcome with my co-presenter Manisha Sharma. So this series we have been doing on Gandhian perspective. In the earlier series, we had discussed about climate change, sustainability in the perspective of Gandhian thoughts. In continuation of those lectures, we are continuing today. The topic is energy security, energy transition, a Gandhian perspective. It will be divided into two parts. In the first part, the learning objectives would be to overview the concept of energy security in a four-way definition, to comprehend the issues and challenges related to energy security, to present an energy security model, and to see how Gandhian philosophy unfolds the challenges of energy security. Energy security, if we define it in terms of a 4A definition of energy security, it incorporates availability, accessibility, affordability, and acceptability. They are introduced by APERC, that is Asia Pacific Energy Research Center, in 2007. Now, this lecture takes these four dimensions to capture and understand the concept of energy security, and we will see how Gandhian philosophy is closely linked and comparable to this particular aspect. Conceptualizing energy security in context of all these four aspects or definitions, dimensions, we take first the accessibility dimension. Energy access is important and critical for all purpose and all economic development. Infrastructure such as schools, hospitals, factories, and other socio-economic activities are possible only with energy accessibility. So it becomes a fundamental requirement, prerequisite for an economic growth of any region, any country, or any local area, anything. Second aspect is availability. It pertains to the supply side of evaluating the energy availability. That includes transmission and distribution losses. There are a lot of energy wasted and there are losses related to transmission. We know we have been following the way of grid connected energy system, which the production of energy is far off, and while we get electricity in our houses through the grid, this particular connectivity, grid connectivity, is hampered because of lot of type of losses. They are considered as transmission and distribution losses and commercial losses also. These are responsible for the availability of electricity access. The third dimension is affordability. This caters to the demand side of which is determined by the prices, and prices are depends how much we are conserving, how much we are efficient in consuming the energy, and then it also depends upon our habits and day-to-day pattern of living. So acceptability, which is the last component or last dimension of the energy security, conceptualizing corporate social responsibility. It is a huge, the spectrum of this particular dimension is vast. It includes inclusivity, it includes economic, social dimension, and it includes the environmental and ecological dimension also. So as a result, we can name it in the framework of corporate social responsibility, which is an upcoming recent terminology being defined to capture that how much aware and how much sensitive we are towards economic, social, and environmental responsibility. So an energy system which is more acceptable and which contributes to CSR, corporate social responsibility, is considered more acceptable, and therefore it satisfies energy system or energy security. So bringing together all these four dimensions of energy aspects, energy security aspect, we need to evaluate whether the kind of energy system we are having is sustainable, or it is secure, or it is insecure. Now, looking at the energy accessibility, which is the first dimension, there is a significant role in attaining the Millennium Development Goals. As one of the Millennium Development Goals, that energy should be accessed to all equitably, and post-independence eras, the several energy access schemes have been designed, various subsidies have been designed in order to provide energy to eat and one and all in the society, like LPG in the form of the commodity, energy commodity like LPG, kerosene, or there are so many other schemes by government. Then inclusive development is another aspect which has been handled by the accessibility under Millennium Development Goals. So coupled with the equal opportunities to all the people and sustaining all the regions and the societies. So inclusivity is another important aspect. Home-based industries, like people who are producing within their own community and employing, also providing employment to at least 4% of the working population, they have been majorly ignored. So energy accessibility is a very critical aspect for a development, and it is considered as one of the component of the Millennium Development Goals. So to reach that energy accessibility, one needs to critically evaluate the energy system. Now, accessibility also is affected by the transmission and distribution losses. And the second, availability component, is directly affected by the transmission distribution losses. Now, let us just first understand in detail the transmission distribution losses associated with the centralized system of provisioning of energy systems. For example, the way we have the grid connected electricity systems. The entire losses of transmission distribution can be categorized as transmission losses as well as the commercial losses. As the name suggests, transmission losses, the type of losses which are incorporated in this are inadequate investment on T&D, improper load management, unmetered supply, poor quality of equipments used in the agriculture sector, like use pumps and all that in the rural areas. Then poor quality of coolers and air conditioners used in the industrial load in the urban areas. So these are the ways in which you can see the distribution losses. There are certain commercial losses associated, like unauthorized extension of loads. So it is very evident and largely very commonly seen that unauthorized extensions have been taken by various individuals, the entities, the sectors and different firms, and they do not pay, and they have been using it without payment. So another commercial loss is the tempering of meter readings by the mechanical jerks or anything like that, and then stopping of the meters by remote control, improper testing, and then calibrations of meters also. These are all types of commercial losses which one can notice in such a system. Further is provide the distinction for the private sector participation, and it is these commercial losses which are responsible for demotivating the private sector to merge and to participate in this distribution process. Agriculture tariffs which are based on the low load declaration, but consumers increase their connecting loads without applying for the sanctions. These are some of the monitoring aspects and administrative issues which are associated. Now, these are the losses which come under the availability aspect of energy security. It is there, but it is not available for people to use because most of them has been lost during the transmission system or distribution system. Another third aspect is energy affordability. The issue of pricing depends on the demand and supply. Substantially the demand depends upon how people use energy and what is the pattern of consumption of energy, their habits. Simple habits like turning off the machines when they machines, fans and gadgets and everything when they leave the room after using them, and using the efficient ways of appliances. For example, efficient vehicles, energy efficient appliances like LED, etc. So that will help us save energy and make it more affordable. So energy affordability incorporates energy conservation behavior of people. For example, turning off lights, leaving the room while and switching off fans, etc. Recycling of aluminium cans. This can also be included. Now, this kind of a behavior, an attitude, an attribute towards life, when a person is vigilant and sensitive and aware about the every use and every consumption he makes, a decision he makes on energy related. So if that awareness is there, then that would come under the perspective of Gandhian and J.C. Kumarappa notion of non-violent economy and Gandhian notion of minimum consumption. This is what we in the last series discussed about Gandhian notion of minimum consumption and J.C. Kumarappa's non-violent economy. So such an attitude, awareness, a person who's connected and who's more self-evolved and self-realization, a person would be more aware about affordability. And energy acceptability is another fundamental. Philosophically, if we look at energy acceptability, which is the fourth component of energy security, a 4A definition, concept of corporate social responsibility, CSR. CSR is the term which has been adopted and which incorporates economic, social and environmental dimension and consciousness. A lot of businesses have integrated this concept in their production activities, in their consumption activity, in all their activities. So this CSR component is gradually receiving a great importance in the system, both by government and private individuals and internationally and nationally. So this kind of a consciousness, which is evolved consciousness and which inculcates the responsibility and welfare of all, and which are fundamentals of Gandhian thoughts and which are fundamentals of non-violent economy, they all find their way. Now, value chain business is the key in the current system of investment in any kind of infrastructure. So we see value chain, global value chains, and at the national and global levels both. So energy acceptability, which involves value chains, referring to the widespread range of cross-border value chain businesses activities involving stakeholders both locally and globally. In fact, CSR becomes one of the more challenging concept in the times when we have global value change, and to think about economic, social, environmental responsibilities to maintain CSR becomes a very difficult task at the governance level, assessment level and information management level, because these chains are operating not at a one particular, they are centrally organized and then they spread out to small areas, regions, local areas, national and international level. So to register and to administer these kind of corporate social responsibility in such a globally connected value chain systems, it becomes a difficult, major challenge. And therefore the problem of acceptability, it becomes difficult to address. In the scenario when the renewable energy system is embarking, in a technology is embarking at the globalized country, world level, and in this the sustenance of these global value chains and managing the CSR becomes a huge challenge. Now, looking at the centralized system of provision of energy systems, instruments like which lead to socio-economic benefits to the society, it becomes difficult to finally address to each and every individual's demand if it is a centralized system, because the entire supply and demand is being controlled by a central system which is located at the center level. So it doesn't reach out to the core individual regional level where people are actually located, and the challenges associated with them are not addressed. A centralized system is highly vulnerable to being trapped in the clutches of the political economy for the voting system, and it becomes the tool for a lot of vested interests and lobbies, and depriving a large section of society living in the remote areas where there is no access to electricity and the basic amenities. So the centralized system actually leads to one can address it in terms of Gandhian perspective, a violent economy full of elements of greed, competition, concentration of power in hands of few people, elite groups, and they decide who will get who will get the benefits. So the question of for whom and of whom will always be addressed by the few members in the society, while the decentralized system for developing economies would not only empower the communities and each individual in the society, but also enhance everybody's capabilities, developing their basic infrastructure where everyone is potential of everyone is explored, and the demands of everyone is attained. Centralized system leads to a violent economy, and violence which is associated with quest of power to attain the hegemony and supremacy over others. So here is a situation which is created for warfare, unrest, dispute, conflict, and thus everything follows. So under the framework, the urge to maintain supremacy and hegemony, the motive of accumulating more and more materialistic commodities and more of raw material to produce more, inculcate the spirit of competition and destroying the basic nature of mankind, that is peace and non-violence. So affordable, that is how we can say that how energy security, when it is addressed in the context of Gandhian and Kumarappa model, the affordability component of energy security is which incorporates or which involves demand and supply, is very uniquely and very comfortably addressed by their fundamentals of sustainable demand. And sustainable demand is something which is not talked about in the commercial world. It depends on how people think about it. It is catering and it is addressing the issues from the demand side and not the supply side. So the market forces can be tapped and they can be challenged by the demand which originates and from the individual himself. Simple habits like turning the machinery when you are done with, switching off the lights and fans when you have used them, and then using the efficient vehicles and energy efficient appliances, consciously buying and using it, is something which is motivated by the individual consciousness, and that is how that self-realization and self-enhancement is the key which originates from the Gandhian thoughts. Energy conservation, another very important aspect which is being talked about now in sustainable development goals. So this also is originating from the same core thought process of Gandhian thoughts and J.C. Kumarappa thoughts, and leaving there is no room for accumulation. So conservation is the conscious act which is associated with one's philosophical attitude towards life, and if a person is conscious, will conserve for future and for the future generation, and this comes from the original thought process of self-realization and self-consciousness. Similarly, the corporate social responsibility. There is no rule, or it cannot be a top-down approach. As conservation cannot be a top-down approach, it is self-motivated. Similarly, CSR cannot be a top-down approach. It originates from within. Concept of promoting and incorporating the sustainable and inclusivity in any kind of an investment activity is an act which originates within. From both the energy conservation and energy efficiency are these two components which affect the accessibility and availability component of energy security majorly. So affordability, other thing, is also affected by the same act. So if you see the J.C. Kumarappa notion of non-violent economy and Gandhian notion of minimum consumption, these are the elements which are already embedded. So if the framework of Gandhian notion is adopted, where the individual is more conscious about the other and the welfare of the people, and the state is more conscious about the trusteeship, and it is more conscious about the not on the ownership and the accumulation, it is more for the welfare of the people and on welfare of all. So under such a kind of a motto and conscious behavior, even the energy security, which everyone is talking about and all the nations are worried about, because developing nations are worried about, because energy transition is the key answer today when you talk about climate change. One of the major component of solutions to climate change is energy transition. While maximum developing countries do not have the technology to adopt energy transition because of multitude of socio-economic capital reasons. So we will address the energy transition in the next lecture. So this was all about energy security and how Gandhian thoughts and Gandhian Kumarappa model can easily address the energy security in their perspective and Gandhian thoughts. Thank you so much.